We haven't talked much about the schematic within Modo. Essentially, the schematic is a network of textures, a network of MeshFusion, and it's integrated throughout. And often it's one way to visualize your project, but it's also a way to do more than what's visible just the shader tree or the item list. So in order to get started in the schematic, let's just start using it within MeshFusion. From here, we're going to go into shaders, and we'll put a little schematic on there as well. Up at the top, you're going to see schematic fusion. Now, by default, you think, oh, the big blank interface, and might be a little scary to use. Well, the thing is, it's not. All right, and there's a few little tricks you need to know in order to get your fusion going in the schematic view. And you may even find that this is a little bit more organized way to go about developing your MeshFusion. Sometimes this tree could be a little awkward. All right. Now the thing is, if we wanted to create a MeshFusion inside this schematic view, what we would do is when we hit New Fusion, notice that we were using 3D Fusion Tree. You can also put Schematic Fusion, and it would build it inside here. Well, you simply can't just say, okay, well, I want the schematic now with one click. There's a little bit you have to do. And all you really need to do, to be honest, it's not that hard, is click that base root, that little dot right there. And at the bottom, it says Content Tree to Schematic Fusion. Oh, okay, wasn't so hard. But look at how complex that looks. All right, so it's really not that hard to build with a tree when you see this. And what this does is puts this beautiful tree together for everything we just did. All right, and it's really quite simple. It just looks complex. This is actually what you want to put up on the screen when a client comes in. Oh yeah, I'm working really hard. I got all this nodes I got to put together, and make it look like you're really busy. But what you're doing though is you're just visually laying out what's happening on your model. So let's take a look. All of these right here, the ring, the inside cut, the top cuts, the cuts here and the cuts here, and you can see them select and correspond as I choose them. These are coming into our fusion union. Here's our fusion intersect, and here's our other fusion union. Now, the one thing with the union, you're going to see two unions, but it's really not. Note that this says negated, negative. All right, so it's basically a reverse union, meaning that it is a subtraction. All right, so all of these here, the majority of our cuts are going into our subtraction. But we have another object up here that's going into the union, and this is our mic base. That's where everything starts. All of those then feed into the intersect input, and then the output of that, this feeds to a union, which finally feeds out to our main fusion object. Okay, now it's called two cubes because however we started, we were calling it that. We should rename that. So we'll go here to the model view, two cubes. We can call this final fusion, something like that. All right, and we can name it in here too. Just click it there, but they're all connected, and you have to think of this fusion network, this fusion schematic as a network. It's just a network of nodes. And what's really cool about using it this way is that you can very easily take things off or connect things. So let's do that. So let's go down here to our cuts. We'll take these top cuts right here. That's this one. Let's say I don't want those anymore. I can click on the node and pull it off. And of course, we've got a lot going on, so we'll give it a second here. And now that cut's no longer there. Or your client says, you know what, let me see what it looks like again. Drag it back on. Okay, so not really much of a problem. Very easy to use. But how would you build your own schematic? That is the question I'm sure you're asking yourself. Well, let me save this as old Mic 3 schematic. And you can load that up. Next video, let's go ahead and build a very small little fusion tree. Let's go ahead and do just nothing and show you how this schematic can work. I'm going to open up the object geometry for this, and we're going to add this little hexagon right here. And then in the layout tab, I'm actually going to come into meshes, and in there, start it back up at the top so you can see it. Under meshes, there is a MeshFusion folder. and there's a fonts folder in there, and you can choose rounded fonts that are available for MeshFusion. So if you want to put letters or numbers into something, it's actually a really great way to work. So I'm going to go here to default, control space to a perspective view. There is that. Okay, good. So let's just say we want to make like a key that we'd put on a keyboard or on a phone or on a panel or something. So let's choose a 9. It's appropriate. Double click it to add it. All right, and let me just see where it is. There it is. Okay, so let's jump over to MeshFusion schematic. We've got these 2 items. Now, you can't just drop them in there. You have to do something a little bit different. Okay, just reposition this just a little bit. Just sized it and moved it down. So now I want to take this one, and I want to create a new fusion, but this time use schematic fusion rather than a tree. And I want a union of meshes. And because it's schematic, it will drop everything into the schematic that I need. Here are 2 objects, those 2 that I had, with a union. We're not using intersect or subtraction. It's putting it together to our final object. And of course, if we go in nice and close, looking good. We can come to the strip if we want and increase the width, give it a little bit softer look. That's great. And now we actually have fonts in there, which is a really nice thing. Let's do a little bit more. I want to jump over here to layout, and let's do, of course, a 1. Jump that in there, and did that go in there? It did not. Do it again. There's a 1, and let's find a 0. Good. And we'll come back here to our schematic. Now, I want to add this as a schematic. I don't need to go back into make a new fusion. I could just put them in there. But the problem is, aside from getting these sized up, is that I can't just drag them in like I showed you. We need to do something. We need to prepare them in such a way. So I'm just moving these around here like this. It's kind of fun. And what I'm going to do is take that object, press Control F with my mouse in this view, and I get this nice little pop-up, and we could prep and add selected meshes. We can add a fusion node. We can add an intersection node, and so on. We can instance and do a few other schematic things by hitting more. So some extra controls right there. So Control F, prep and add selected meshes. Now we can do multiple meshes. So I want 1 and 0. Select them both. Move the mouse. Control F, prep and add selected. Okay, but it just drops them in there. It's not connected to anything. Well, the cool thing about that is I can do whatever I want. I can take this fusion. Let me zoom in here so you can see. I can take this one and put it down. Let's say, oh, I don't know. We'll take the O. Let's do that. That'd be kind of fun. We'll take the fusion feed, drop it into the negative union, and off we go. But it doesn't look like anything happened. Well, let's take a look at this. I bet you it's not quite in there, is it? So let's just move it down, and boop, there we go. And of course, that's live, so we can animate that, do whatever we need. So there's the O looking good. And we take the 1, and we can drop that fusion feed into a union as well. And of course, let's get that into place. There we go. Dropped it into our union. Very nice. And then we can select that strip if we want. Okay, now, same thing like before. If those strips aren't popping up for you, go to Strip Options, Update Strips, and let's select that one, and there we go. And you'll be good to go there. We'll pop that up just a little bit, not too much to the edge. Good. Now, I feel like changing the 0. I want to move it down a little bit. I want to move it over. So I don't like it negative. So we're just going to pull that out of there. We're going to drag it up to the union as well, so everything's consistent. And then we'll select that strip. And again, I didn't pay attention, so I'm just freeforming it like that. Good. So that's really as simple as the unions and subtractions and everything else get with the schematic view. Just like before, you can see that we had trees. So the way we had trees in the traditional view, and you had different branches, you can do that in here as well. So This would all be one branch right here, this intersection, and then we'd have another one that would go in there, and that was in our previous video or the previous section. So that's going to wrap it up for MeshFusion right now. I think this could be something really, really tremendous for you to spend time with, learn your modeling skills using this kind of methodology versus traditional. So think about carving objects versus building objects. Let's go on to the next video, talk a little bit more about schematic with the shader tree, and we'll go ahead and put some surfaces on our microphone.